So, Carl, you mentioned earlier you went to Philadelphia. You experienced the 1700s, the disgusting cesspool, as you will. What other cities or places have you visited where you experienced something similar? Do you have any cool, stories? Have you been, to historical sites where you could recount what happened there and see that?
Lower Manhattan. I see a lot of things there, but not terrifying. Philadelphia, it bothers me. Lower Manhattan, I could see the way people were, the way they walked around, the feel for the area. And it's sort of can make you a very knowledgeable person about a certain part of the city. And I find myself talking about things that I really should not know, but I do know. I went to Gettysburg. To give you an idea about this, I was asked to go to Gettysburg. And in Gettysburg, there's a building. It's called the Jenny Wade House. Jenny Wade was the only civilian who died in the Battle of Gettysburg. She had a house that was there. She refused to leave. And what happened is that a Confederate sharpshooter saw movement in the kitchen, and he shot through the door, and that's what killed her. That's the way the story goes. Now, Rosemary Guiley, who's very famous, and she did a lot of things in Gettysburg. They asked her she asked if she could bring me to the Jenny Wade House to take a look around. Mm-hmm. So the warden said, okay, he says, go there before the people go there and have him take a look around. So here I was in the Jenny Wade House in Gettysburg with Rosemary Guiley and given permission by the warden to go there and inspect the house. So I walked through the house and through between psychometry and retrocognition, I'm going through the house. And for about 45 minutes, I'm going through this entire house. And then I walked up to her and I said, everything is wrong. She says, well, what do you mean? I says, the bed was facing in a different direction. And I showed how the direction was. The wallpaper that they have here that's supposed to be original is wrong. And I says, there was more flowers in the original. And I says, this color is wrong. It was more blue than green. And then I started walking through the first floor, pointing out things that were wrong. I said, this supposed table is replacement. The original table did not look like this. So I go through the whole thing, and I went up on the second floor, and I'm telling him that everything that is wrong about this place. So she goes, okay. And she looked at me kind of, strangely, because they advertised that this is this is the way the house was and the furniture and everything else. So the ranger comes by, and he has the sunglasses on, the mirror sunglasses, with the smoking the bear hat.
Ranger Will and Holly. Right.
Yes. So he walks in there, and she said, well, she says, he's really good at what he does. He says, but he says there's some things that are wrong.
He's making us look bad.
And so,
false advertising.
And so she goes, for example, he says, and she said with the bed and the wallpaper and the table, and he's going through all that. And this guy is just, remember, it's the sunglasses that have the mirrors on them.
Yep.
And he's just staring at her. And occasionally he turns his head, he looks at me, and he turns back to her. And she's going through all this. And she goes, what do you make of all this? So for about 5 seconds, he doesn't say a word. Then he looks at Rosemary Guiley and he says, everything he said was true.
Wow.
She goes, but why do you have everything different? He goes, we had to do this. We had to put in central air, and we couldn't do it the way it was before. We had to change everything so it could accommodate central air.
Of course.
So then he looks at me, and he says to me, he goes, He goes, and you saw all that? I said, yeah. He goes, would you be willing to go with me and another ranger tonight? We'll take you someplace that visitors never go. And he goes, and there's nothing written about this place, and you could tell me what's there. So I did, sure, let's do it. So it was Rosemary, it was me, my wife, and the two rangers. One was the other ranger was a female. And he takes us in his truck, and we go to some godforsaken place. There's no lights anywhere. And we're going down these dark roads, 2-lane highways. And then he pulls into this lot. And it has a tiny little road that goes around it. And he goes, tell me what was here. I said, you got to let me out of the truck. I said, stay about 50 feet behind me. And slowly as I'm walking, just be behind me. And I'm walking around. So here I am. I have all these people in the truck, and I'm walking in front of this big truck around Gettysburg, where I don't know this place. And all I could hear is the sound that horses make, that sound that they make. And I could smell the horses, and I could hear their hoofs going up and down, a lot of horses. And I'm thinking, maybe it was a farmer or something that had this, maybe is this a farmer's horses or something. So I walked up to the truck, and I felt really, really bad because, it's just weird stuff that I saw and heard. And so I said to the rangers, I said, look, I don't know exactly what was here, but all I could tell you is there's a tremendous amount of horses here. I hear them. I could see them. I says, all I see is a bunch of horses. So he looks down at me. By this time, he's not wearing the sunglasses. And he looks down at me, and he goes, this was the area for the Union cavalry. They stored all their horses here.
Wow.
Wow.
Do you know Brother Don Scar by any means?
No, I don't believe so.
He's a past master, and he just got up to Right Worshipful under Gene now that he's Grand Master. But he was a past master of Milltown Palestine Lodge. And he is an active and avid reenactor. He's out at Gettysburg all the time, reenacting, Union battles and all that kind of cool stuff. In fact, we did a small movie called Bucktail Brigade out there in Gettysburg with some friends, a short film. And he was integrated into the poster for it, which is kind of cool. But I just figured, I don't know if you spent any additional time out there, but you may have run into him or Ray Helge, who does more Revolutionary War reenactments. But I wanted to ask on this. So this idea of seeing the past, how far have you tested how far you can go in terms of back in time? That, can you find the Tomb of Alexander, or do you know where the Ark of the Covenant is, or anything like that?
I'm not saying. I wanted to know how far back I could see.
Right.
The United States is too young. It's only a few hundred years old. Since we became a nation. So I decided to go to England.
Okay.
To go to where they're at, because their stuff dates back thousands of years. And I'm not going to go to the Tower of London, all that poo. I'm not going to be bothered with that. I want to go.
That's still newer, right?
Right. Yeah, of course.
And also, it's like, no matter what I say, it's been written about already. So, and of course, they could say, well, you read this in a book.
Right.
So that's not going to do me any good.
Right.
So what I did is I have friends in England, and I told them what I wanted to do. I says, I have to go back to see how far back I can go. So they took me to the Rollright Stones that dates back to the days of the Romans when they were occupying England.
Okay.
So they took me there, and they said, well, this is an area that dates back 5,000 years. So I went there, and I could not get clarity. I saw blurs. Mm-hmm. And they're like, I see blurs. I can't really see much about them. And I said, but I could see them, but I can't. It seems like I can't go back over 5,000 years. So my retrocognition will go back thousands, but I do have a limit, and 5,000 seems to be it. And then recently, when I was doing research for my next book, my third book, we went back there because I was doing a book on time slips, and they said that time slips happen at this particular area. So I went there, and as I'm standing looking around, they said that the National Trust, they're the ones that take care of all this, their state parks and everything. And they said that they're going to be doing work. They're going to clear out places where they believe the villages were. And so I was walking with my host, and I looked at the whole ground, and I said, if you really want to know where they lived, and I turned around, I started walking through the woods, and I pointed down at the ground. I says, this is where they were hanging around. And he put a big smile on his face. He goes, this is the scheduled area that they were going to put the research in. This is where they said the villages were, just where you said.
So for the benefit of our viewers, can you explain a time slip?
Yes,
what
good
you're
question.
referring to there?
Yeah, I was just going to ask that same thing.
A time slip is a real phenomenon where a person, anybody, could be somewhere and all of a sudden everything around them changes and it goes back in time. It could go back 50 years or it could go back 300 years. And you could be there for anywhere from 10 seconds to a full 4 minutes. And then you snap back, you come back. Now, I know it sounds crazy, and how could that be true? Well, yeah, that's, what people always said, except what's been happening is that lately, people who have credibility have reported this. They cannot just shrug it off anymore. They can't say this is ridiculous, it doesn't happen. Now, they found out that a place where this happens most often is in Liverpool, England, on a street called Bold Street, that's B-O-L-D, that this has happened there a number of times. So when I was doing my research for my book, I hopped on a plane and we went to Bold Street in Liverpool. Okay. I wanted to see what this place was like. And so I went there, and of course, I didn't see anything, but I wanted to go to the place where this was happening. And if you watch, like, In Search of with Zachary Quinto, he did a show on it, and he's talking about time slips. And he says, and then the minute he's talking about it, he goes, we have to go to Liverpool to Bold Street. And so he starts talking about it. And so that's what a time slip is. And people never took it seriously. They just took it as, people, they were dreaming about this and all that. And it can't be true until too many people, in this one particular case in 1998, a former policeman had a time slip. And when he went into the time slip, he met somebody who's having the same time slip. And a bookstore turned out to be a big department store that dated back to like 1949, 1950. So not only was he there, he had somebody with him that was experiencing the same thing. And then he snapped back. And now the Liverpool police couldn't take this as, fantasy land, because it's one of their policemen who's trained to be an observer. And it wasn't just one guy. It happened to be two. And so now they're taking it seriously. Now they're talking more and more about it. And you're going to be hearing more and more about it. And my book sort of like gives you a common sense approach to it about, what a time slip is. It talks about my time slip that I had and some of the people that I interviewed, but I didn't make the whole book about interviews because I felt it'd be for the reader, it'd be sort of like aggravating after a time because you're reading about this person and that person and this person, that person, and you're going to say, well, it never happened to me. Am I going to experience it? I'm telling you, most likely not. But there are people out there who will experience it.
So I could actually attest to that. I had an experience right here in Morristown, Tempewick. Well, it was actually in Jockey Hollow on Tempe-Wick Road. We were hiking one day in the woods, and I was with another friend. We were both transported, what I would describe back to Revolutionary War times. You could see the horses, see the soldiers that were camping, walking around, and it lasted probably about, I would say, 1.5 to 2 minutes.
Right.
It was highly unusual. I mean, that's not something I would normally ever see. The other person experienced the same exact thing. Saw the sights, smells. You could just, I was back in that moment, and it was the summer, and when we were transported back, it was really cold.
Right.
So I actually had the chills. I felt cold. It was just like, oh man, what the hell just happened? So I guess that would be a time slip then.
You got it. That's a time slip. And in my own theory, which I cannot validate, I can't say this is true. It's only my opinion about this. I believe that everybody who's listening to this broadcast is living through time slips constantly, every single day. The thing is, when you drive around and you look around at different buildings and you could visualize what it was like before, see, I don't believe that what you're looking at is just an imagination of what it could have looked like. I believe you're actually seeing it. And the reason I say that is because years ago, back in the 1970s, they had subliminal messages that the movies would put in. They would put in a picture of a hot dog or a big Coca-Cola, an ice cold Coca-Cola. And they would put these in there into the movie. They would show the movie, and at intermission, the people would go out and buy a tremendous amount of hot dogs, Coca-Cola, but they never saw it. It was there, and the sales went up dramatically. And it would be like candy, or wherever they're trying to sell, they would put these little images in there, which, believe me, when they were showing the movie, you could not see. It went by your face.
Yeah, so subliminal stuff. Sure.
Yeah.
But
subliminal messaging.
Now it's illegal.
Well,
you can't do that anymore.
Yeah, if you see Fight Club, they see how many pictures of male body parts they could put in a movie without people noticing, and yet what effect it would have on them, kind of thing.
Right.
Tell me this, Karl, though. You've traveled around the world, obviously, not only for your books, but, to travel on your own. What other famous sites have you been to? Have you been to the pyramids? Have you been to Chichen Itza, Stonehenge? I mean, what other older stuff have you seen and tried to visualize?
I've been to Stonehenge, and everything that they tell you how it was built is incorrect.
Okay.
I knew how they built it, and before I even went to England, and I told my wife about it, and I told my hosts that were in England about what to expect, and I said that I hear a high frequency pitch sound that when they were moving the stones around. I said they were levitating stones. Now, how they were doing it, they had help. And if we're talking about UFOs, let's say UFOs.
Who's doing the helping, Karl?
Yeah.
Well,
who's the helping?
The thing is that people don't realize is what you see above ground in Stonehenge is equal underground.
Okay.
Each stone weighs, like 80 tons or more. This is pre the wheel. This is before they had the wheel. The quarry that they got it from was over 200 miles away.
Right.
And he had to cross over water to get that stone to Stonehenge, the location. Now, the only way they could do it was probably drag it or put beams down or logs and roll it on logs to get it around. And the way I see it is you would need a tremendous amount of people. We're talking scores of people who would have to make rope. Because remember, you can't go to the store and buy rope.
Right.
You have to make rope.
Usually hemp or something else out of it. Yeah.
And so you would have to make hemp, put it around this stone, find logs, which, by the way, there are not like logs there. It's not trees like the United States. You have to really hunt to find trees. And you have to drag them over this thing if that's the way you did it. And to drag them over 200 miles from that quarry and bring them to the location of Stonehenge, that would mean it would take probably easily a half a year to bring one stone over. Now, can you imagine a guy with his wife there or a significant other, and after 6 months or 8 months, he walks into this little hut and he says, "Hi, hon. Boy, we had a rough time. And guess what? We're leaving tomorrow. We got another stone to pick up." It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous that you could expect these people to do that. Not to mention going to the quarry and get these stones out of the quarry, down to the ground, chop them up, whatever, and then move them. And they have a museum that's right there on site. And they show that they shaped the stones by using crude chisels and rocks as hammers.
Nonsense.
It's like, are you kidding me? And they showed like brass. Let me tell you something. I don't know if you're familiar with working with brass. It's kind of a very soft material.
Yeah.
Go up to a nice boulder and just start smashing this thing to see if you could cut it. Go ahead, do it. It would take you forever to do it. And now another thing is, how are you going to straighten this thing out?
Right.
They said, well, you could dig a hole and you push it into the hole. And
With water, they said that it sort of displaces the water as it goes in and like all that kind of thing. Can you, because obviously since you experienced the I don't want to say the vibration, although it fits, vibration frequency of that time that moved the stones, you heard it, right? I mean, you clearly experienced it on some level. Yeah. Were you able to differentiate on some level what specific vibratory frequency it was being used?
I couldn't do that. I know the high shrill sound that was going on. And when I was now you got to remember something about Stonehenge. Right. They don't have lights in the ground that shine on this thing at night. They don't have that. It remains dark all the time. There is no electricity anywhere around it. When I was with my host there, and I was telling him before we even got to Stonehenge about the high-pitched shrilling sound, and I could see things being moved. And I said there was a lot of high-power electricity going through the area. And so, after I relieved myself and told him all this stuff, there's a path that walks around Stonehenge. There's a spot that has a bridge on it. There's a little brook that, I guess if it rains a lot, the water goes underneath this little indentation in the ground. So you can walk over this aluminum bridge. So he knew what I was saying about the electricity that was generated by this thing. So he's walking behind me. I walked across the bridge. He's behind me, and there's all these tourists that are there. He takes his hands and he touches the railing. The sound of the electric shock that went through that railing was so loud that it stopped everybody in their tracks, anywhere around Stonehenge, and they stopped to stare. What was that sound of electric that went through this guy's arms? And I looked at him and said, "Are you okay?" And he goes, that was the biggest shock I ever got in my life. And remember, there is no electricity. I was wondering if there was any wires that was going under the ground. Nothing like that.
So is this one of those piezoelectric things where the consistency of the rocks, does it have a lot of quartz in it? Or,
I don't know. I really don't know, because you can't walk up to the rocks. They don't allow you to.
They don't?
No, you can't walk up to the rocks and touch them. You can't do that. I wanted to know that, but, they're not going to let you do it. But the thing is, what shocked me.
I wonder if our buddy Tim Hogan could get us there. He can get us into the Great Pyramid, so maybe he can get us into the Stonehenge.
I don't know, but just bear with me.
Sure.
Here.
Sure.
So anyway, the whole point of the matter is that it's sort of like gave me the okay, saying that what you're saying about the electric, about this high power shrill and moving these stones, is accurate. That's how they moved them around. And I challenge anybody to tell me, how can you get a people who have not advanced to the wheel to move these enormous pieces of rock across water? How did they get across the water? Did they build a ship to move them across the water? It's like a river. How did they do that?
So what did they use Stonehenge for? Were you able to see that?
No, just I wasn't quite sure. I think there was a number of uses for it. I believe, and this is strictly me, that Stonehenge was a landing area for aircraft.
Wow.
It's built like a circle. It's off the ground. Oh, I don't know if you know this or not. People don't know this about Stonehenge. But at the top of every rock, it's a cutout like a Lego, that the stones that lay on top, they fit into it. They plug into it. So if you look at the top of Stonehenge, it's a flat piece of ground with these rocks underneath it. And that's why I believe that this thing was built so that aircraft could land on top of it. And if there's any kind of exhaust or kind of pushing out any kind of energy, it would have to be above ground. You know, if you notice that with the United States, when we are shooting off a rocket, whatever, if you watch, you see all the smoke and everything go sideways underneath. That's because there's tunnels underneath. If they didn't have the tunnels to take away all that heat and everything, it would burn up the rocket.
Right.
So when it takes off, all the stuff blows underneath it. It goes through the tunnels out to the side, and then it's able to take off because it's not going to burn itself off. And the rocket uses approximately, if I remember correctly, 22,000 gallons per second. That's how much fuel it takes. You look at a spaceship ready to take off, only the top has the magic stuff in the astronauts and the computers. Everything else is nothing but fuel.
Right.
Yeah, the propellant.
Now, if you have a aircraft, a spaceship of some kind, and you have to land and take off again, you're going to need some place that you could land, that when you take off, and if there's any kind of fumes or fire or anything else, it's going to have to be extended to the bottom. It can't be underneath it, or it's going to burn it up.
That's pretty cool stuff. Have you ever seen any aliens, or personally interacted with them, or seen them, or?
I saw a UFO back when I was a kid, and we're talking the late 1950s. And we were traveling northbound on Route 115, going through Pennsylvania on our way to Wilkes-Barre. And as we were going through there, my father, I remember I was a tiny little kid, and my father kept on looking up in the sky through the windshield of our 1955 Pontiac. And he's looking through the windshield, and he's just driving. Then he pulls over to the side, and it's totally desolate, no lights or anything. And he says, "Everybody get out." And he points his finger up to the sky. He says, "Look at that. This thing is moving back and forth." And so here I'm looking at this thing that's going back and forth. And then all of a sudden, it just sort of like takes off and disappears. That was the first time I ever saw a UFO that really was in the front of my face watching this. As for, actual interacting with aliens, whatever, I don't know. Because with the people that like Ingo and people that I've known, their thing was they're hybrids. They look a lot like humans, and you may actually be interacting with them, and you wouldn't even know it. So I could have, but
I often feel this way about Dave. Yeah, I'm not quite sure if he is an alien or not, but I have my doubts. But no, I'm joking. But not really.
Definitely not an intelligent species.
No. What do you know about stuff like that's a little bit more metaphysical, like Merkabas? Are you familiar with Merkabas as a concept or that kind of thing?
Nothing about that.
Okay. Because, some of the people have said that, for instance, the Greys used certain things about certain spacecrafts based on Merkabas and other things to come here. I was just curious if you now were you influenced at all in the way that you do your readings and such by anyone previously? Were you taught at any point outside of, I know you said that you didn't want to have anything that influenced your talents, right? So that they would change things around. So, but at all, did you have any outside input that you have decided would be helpful or that you started to get into?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Ingo Swan.
Oh, Ingo. So Ingo was one that helped. Okay.
Yes, he did. And he explained a lot of things that I was seeing. But like I said, a lot of this stuff will take a long time to explain to you about the strange things that he was able to teach me. And I recall Paula Roberts, sitting next to me when we were going through this, and it shocked her what we were going through and what we were able to do. And, we would walk around, he was near the Bowery, that's where he lived. And we would walk around the Bowery, and he would ask me questions or ask me if I felt certain things as we were walking down the street. And he was really way better than I could ever be. And we would talk about things, and he finally said that there's stuff that I can do that he can't.
Like what?
He had a 4-story building with lofts in it. He used to rent out the lofts. And he goes, the people on the one floor, he says, I can't get them to stay there any length of time. They're there, they feel uncomfortable, and they leave. And he said, can you go there and tell me why they're leaving this place? And I said, okay, I'll go up. So I went there with Paula Roberts, and we went up there. I looked around, and I saw the way it was in 1880, the way it was built. And then I came downstairs, and I said, the area that the bathroom is now was not there when the building was built. The bathroom was at the top of the stairs, and all it was a toilet, and it says they had a very crude-looking sink. That was the bathroom. And I said that a man died in the bathroom, and I said all the kids in the neighborhood with the policemen went up there to remove the body. And I says, that's one of the things that happened in this particular apartment. I said that was really shook everybody up, the guy's death and everything. So Ingo, he went out of the room, he came back with a blueprint of the building from, I think, 1882. And so at his table, he opened it up, and then he takes his finger and he goes up the stairs, and at the top of the stairs was the bathroom. He goes, you're right about the bathroom. Now the bathroom is placed more inside. And so we were, we were doing all that, and it worked out really well. I says, you have a problem there with the commotion that took place in this loft. And I says, that residual may still be there. And I think the biggest thing with Ingo and me was I got a phone call after 9/11. And Ingo said to me, he goes, I want you to come see me right away. And I said, I can't because you live outside the Holland Tunnel, and I can't get through the Holland Tunnel because they have armed policemen there and they won't let anybody through.
Right.
So I can imagine him smoking his little cigar, and he goes, he says, get in your truck, drive over to the tunnel. And he says, and when they stop you, tell them that you're allowed to go through and give them my name.
Mm-hmm.
I said, they carry like M16s. I says, I don't want to be killed there. He goes, just go there, mention my name, and he says, they'll let you through.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I go there and I says, I'm scared of this. They're just waiting for a terrorist. And here I am in a truck. So I drive up to the mouth of the Holland Tunnel, and this soldier comes over and with a helmet on, and he with a clipboard, and he goes, you're not allowed in the tunnel. I said, I have permission to go through. And he says, what permission? I said, Ingo Swan.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, wait right here. So they're like, oh my God, what did I do? So he comes back and he says, you can go through, but only escorted.
Mm.
And here this motorcycle cop comes by, and I'm following this cop through the tunnel. And the thought that went through my head is, this is all happening to me, and I don't have a friend or anybody who can verify this, that this is actually happening to me. So I went through the tunnel, and I got to Ingo's place, and he says to me, follow me. We went down to his basement, and he rolls out a map of Afghanistan. He goes, where's bin Laden? If you ever saw a map of Afghanistan, it's a white sheet of paper with a couple squiggles on it. So I said, are you kidding me? I said, I couldn't tell you anything about this map. It's a white sheet of paper with some squiggles on it. I said, I can't tell you about this. And then I looked at him and I said, Flahamabad. He goes, what's that?
Flahamabad?
Said, no. Flahamabad.
Oh, Lahamabad. Okay.
And he goes, is it a town? Or I says, I don't know. It's important though. So he goes, okay, follow me. We went down the Bowery to every single store that had any Middle Eastern person that was around.
Okay.
I could ask. He kept saying, tell him. And I said, Flahamabad. Nobody seemed to know what it was. So he goes, okay. So we went back, and I felt terrible because he expected me to do something and I couldn't do it. But, he says, okay, since you could go back, they're waiting for you. You could go back through the tunnel. Mm-hmm. So they waited for me, and I went through the tunnel, and that was it. I figured that's the end of the story. Well, we have an alarm clock that wakes us up in the morning, and the news comes on. It's like old news all the time. So I'm sleeping in bed. The alarm clock goes off. The radio comes on, and it says, American troops went into Flahamabad, and they captured a cache of computers, weapons, all this. And it was a treasure trove, all this stuff that they found. So, and I'm half groggy, and I says, wait a minute. Did you say Flahamabad?
Bye.
So my wife goes, I'm not sure. So well, let's listen to it. And then about a half hour later, they repeated the story. And they talked about Flahamabad. So I got, that they captured all these weapons and everything. It was like amazing what they got. Two-way radios, everything. Cell phones. So what I did is I called up Ingo. He answers the phone. And I said, tell me something. Is what I told you yesterday that have anything to do with those troops going to Flahamabad?
Mm-hmm.
He goes, well, what do you think? But that's why I'm calling you. I don't know. He goes, well, just keep thinking. And he hangs up the phone. Click.
Wow.
So
is
right.
Ingo passed away now?
Yes, he has.
Has he come to you after he's passed away? No. Okay.
No, that's the people I wanted for him to come to see me. He hasn't. He hasn't come back to Paula Roberts, to no one.
Now,
So
do you know a
it's
guy
very sad.
named David Hawkins by any means? David E. Hawkins. He was a psychiatrist. He passed away in about 2012.
No.
Okay.
I don't know.
So I have an acquaintance, Mary Ennis. She's out of Vermont. She's a channel. She channels a being named Elias. I'm not sure. Have you ever worked with channels or anything like that, or no, nothing like that? Okay.
I stay away from that. Yeah.
You stay away from that. Okay, how come?
Because first of all, I have no interest in it.
Okay, fair enough.
And, to me, it's like if I'm supposed to meet somebody or, have them see me, it's a one-on-one.
Got it.
If you go to somebody and they could say, you say, I want to meet my dead Uncle Dave.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, for $200, we're going to meet Dave. Do the Michael Jackson moonwalk, go backwards out the door and keep running. Nobody could do that.
Mm-hmm.
You can't pinpoint somebody who passed away and say, oh yeah, I could contact them. That's false.
I see.
Nobody could do that.
So how do people come through from a medium perspective? In other words, who comes through? How does it work? Do they take over your body and speak through you, or how does it go?
No, at least I'm speaking for myself. Yeah. That they come and then I see them and then I never saw them move their mouths. It's sort of like telepathy.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I know what they're saying. I know what they're thinking. And that's the way it goes.
So does Kreskin. Right. He just passed away recently. He was a neighbor of mine just in the next town over, actually. You ever meet him?
No, but I know about him, and I know people who had encounters with him.
Sure.
And but you have good thoughts of Kreskin? Let's see.
I don't know. I know he was a showman, right? So as far as that goes, he was an engaging guy. I used to see him around the neighborhood. He liked to feed the deer and stuff like that. He was always out for a cup of coffee. Very jovial guy. As far as his accuracy, I really have no idea.
Okay. But, no, I personally never met him. Mm-hmm. I know of him, but, through other people.
Sure.
But, when it comes, you have to understand, I don't go out of my way to be a medium.
Sure.
What happens, it happens. And that's about it. Other than that, it's like I just go about my life. I don't, people think, well, this is what you do. This is not what I do. Mm-hmm. I have careers and everything and other interests. It just so happens that I could do this stuff. And, when like the CIA or FBI or whatever, they come to me usually unofficially. Mm-hmm. And they ask. And if you were to say that they came to see me to do this or that, they would deny it. They don't want people to know that. It's like when you hear people say that the police department contacts me all the time, so psychically I could tell them about this or that. That's false. Mm. Police departments do not go to psychics. They don't ask them anything. If there is, I never heard of it. The problem of that is the police say if people found out that we're going to you and you were giving us information to capture somebody, the taxpayer is going to say, why are we paying a police department? We just hired this guy. He'll tell us how to find everybody.
Right.
So they want that controversy, so they never do it.
Well, not to mention they need to establish, and I'm speaking as an attorney now, they need to establish custody of a gun or something like that, and they can't just say, well, the psychic told us where the gun was. I mean, it was kind of, that's a tough one to establish chain of custody and other things like that. So that's a tough one.
Sure. Now I worked in law for over 35 years.
Uh-huh.
So because I did forensic videography and photos. I work with everybody.
Got it.
And there's one of the largest law firms in the state that knew about me, would use me, but would never say it. He would ask me to do some ridiculous videotaping or photography that had very little to do with the case. And then we would go to court, and I was sitting next to him, and he says, tell me who I should get rid of on the jury. And I would tell him.
Now, that's a good skill to have, right? So
Yeah.
You make some money that
Well,
way.
because like
Yeah.
when they were announcing, about the case or whatever, I would look at the people. I knew what they were thinking.
Got it.
So then I would tell them. And sometimes when he was doing depositions of different people, and I would, like, I'll give you an example. Some woman got her hand that was mutilated from a press. When they make objects with a press, they have on their hands, they have 2 rings and wires or strings.
Mm-hmm.
And they put the item into the machine, they remove their hands, and they pull down on it, and then the machine will come down and press it.
Right.
So now, because the reason for that is that you know that your hands are away from the machine. So you keep swinging your arms around, and it brings this thing down and makes the piece. Like, for example, it could be oil filters. The top of an oil filter is pressed in by these huge machines.
Sure.
So you put the piece of metal in there, and then you take your arms and you swing them down, and then it pops out this piece. Now, a lot of these people work on by the number of pieces that they make. That's how they get paid.
Got it.
So a lot of these people will take the 2 rings and put them on one arm, and they feed it with their right arm or left arm, whatever, and they put it there, smash it, pull it out, put another one and smash it, because it's quicker to do it like that. You're constantly feeding it, and they produce a lot more product by doing that, by putting 2 rings on one arm. So this one woman did that, and she got hurt. And so I was there to videotape, the deposition, what was going on. And so he's looking at me like, she's saying that, well, she did this, she did that, blah, 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 blah. And so I looked at her, and she spoke with a Jersey City accent. Very distinctive Jersey City accent. So she's talking like that. And then I looked at the attorney, and I just whispered in his ear. I said, find out her status as a citizen. I said, she wasn't born in this country. And he looked at me because her Jersey City accent was so thick you could cut it with a knife. And he goes, what? I says, find out her immigration status. So her boss was sitting at the next table listening to this deposition. And so he asked a few more questions. And he said, can you tell us your immigration status? And then she looked up and she said, I'm here illegally. I heard a thud. Her boss's head hit the table. Because who would ever think that a woman like this was here illegally? But this is the kind of stuff that he used to have me go out and do these tapings or photography or whatever, just so he could ask me questions, but he would never, ever bring up the fact about the paranormal abilities, because he could never go back to his law firm and say, we're hiring these guys so you can tell me something. Like, he wouldn't do it. And by the way, as long as I was on one of his cases, he never lost the case. Never.
Wow.
I'm surprised he doesn't use you for every one of his cases.
Yeah.
Well, I left the legal field.
Oh, I see.
And he was like shocked that I would do that. And I left. And I guess since I'm not doing my old job, he can't hire me anymore. I have to do
No, I suppose. Tell me, is there, what do you see for future projects for yourself? And what do you think your legacy is in terms of your ability and what you were able to contribute to the world?
I don't know. I really don't. Because it's circumstances that come my way. People who need me, I will help them if I believe it's the right thing to do. I'm not on call all the time, except for people that I respect. There are different people in the state of New Jersey who may ask me for things, and I will do it for them. But other than that, when somebody just calls me up on the phone, I doubt if I'll just run out and do something. Because, number one, it's not appreciated. It was said to me once by somebody who charges, nobody respects free. If you pay a lot of money for it, no matter what you tell them, they're very happy. they believe you. If you do something and you don't charge, they think what you're telling them is not true. It can't be true because it's free. And I find that to be very true.
Yeah, they could overlook that, I suppose. Dave, you have any other questions?
Absolutely.
I know you do.
So, from your remote viewing perspective, have you ever delved into some fun places, like going out to, say, the dark side of the moon or Mars or anywhere in the universe?
Yes, I have.
Oh, what's on the dark side of the moon, Carl?
Are you able to speak about it is another question.
I rather not.
Oh, can you give us a hint at least?
We're not the only ones that are on the moon.
Oh,
Right. And
Yeah, because
it was brought up to me about things that were happening on the moon. I was shocked. And then I did some remote viewing, and it's like, oh my God. Engel did it and got so scared that actually there's part of his documentary about him, that about when he remote viewed the moon, which was asked by the United States government for him to do it. And he did it. And I don't know if you ever caught that, but he got terrified what he saw. And he didn't really want to do that anymore. And so I did it. I remote viewed the moon.
sure,
And I rather not get into that.
understood. What about Antarctica or somewhere like that?
oh,
Sorry, Alex.
Well, they're discovering a lot of that stuff now that has been up there. Especially we're having visitors that are coming that are using that area for staging.
Mm-hmm.
And, the thing is about when you talk about UFOs, the minute you mention that, people automatically figure, oh, there's something wrong with you. There's no such things and all that. And it's like, get real, my friend. These things are real. And the government finally is coming out and they're talking about it. And the Vatican knew about it for so many hundreds of years that this stuff was going on. And they released a lot of their records. Countries like Mexico has released their records, and Russia, or I should say the Soviet Union did. And so people are releasing the records and about all this mysterious type of stuff that's going on. And if you want to sit at your home and say, this is ridiculous, it's not true, well, there's a lot of people you got to convince in our government, other countries, and like the Vatican and all that about what's going on.
what
Yeah, we're definitely not alone.
do you have you ever worked for the Vatican? Have they ever employed you or
I can't tell you all the people I worked with.
oh, okay.
I can't do that.
Okay, fair enough. Let's ask this: Has you, in your understanding, or if you've been around, not you specifically, but has the Vatican worked with folks like yourself for various purposes?
Through intermediaries. It won't be the Vatican. It will be a bishop or cardinal or one of these people.
And what type of subject matter would typically be something that they would use people like you for?
That I couldn't tell you.
Okay. That's great stuff, man. So what do you see as the future of humanity? Do you see in terms of more people having psychic gifts in the future, or
Oh, yes.
yes. So that's something that's starting to expand now.
Yeah, if you sit around and all you keep saying is, I don't believe it, nothing's going to happen.
Right.
You're going to leave yourself open and listen and think about these things. And really, when people are talking about like time slips, don't be so quick to say, I don't believe it. Listen to what they have to say. They've experienced something here. I know other people who have, and the credibility is they're great people. Same thing with UFOs. There are people out there, policemen, lawyers, all these people have seen, or presidents have seen things like that. And they're talking about it's a real thing. And yet people, they're like, If I don't see it, then it doesn't exist. And if I do see it, maybe it's something I ate. That's why I'm having these hallucinations. That's the way people are. So for a person like me, if I have a conversation in general public, I got to keep my mouth shut.
Sure.
Because people they make fun of it. You know, they say, oh, green men and blah, blah, blah. And I think they're really being funny, probably because they're nervous about it. And it's frustrating. You have to understand it's like how, and I saw this with Ingo. He was giving an explanation of how aliens get into our world, how they're able to do this. And I'm there with, he had a bunch of professors from different universities. I don't know what universities. I don't know these people. All I know is they were there at this place. And he had a blackboard. He was drawing on this blackboard the mountain ranges, whatever, and how they were sneaking right in without being detected by radar. And he was showing all this. And if I'm lying, I'm dying. This idiot came into the room. He looked at Ingo with all of us standing there, and he goes, oh, you're not talking about those stupid UFOs again, are you? So Ingo he took his hand, he wiped off what he did on the blackboard. He goes, we could all leave now. I never got to hear what he wanted to tell everybody because of an idiot that walked into the room.
It's a sad state of affairs sometimes, people being so ignorant.
Do you think they're interdimensional beings versus,
You know, if you want interdimensional beings, look to Bigfoot.
Sure.
You know, Bigfoot, you see him walking through the snow, and you see his footprints, and all of a sudden they disappear. And I wrote in my last book about the Bigfoot that I was asked to investigate. And I went to this ground that was flipping my compass, was spinning my compass being there. And she told me that this Bigfoot was coming on her property and tore her electric lights right out of the wall.
Wow.
Just out by the roots. And then I looked on the ground and I could see Bigfoot footprints. And what I wrote about is what I call it the zone of silence.
Okay.
She was walking her dog, and she was calling her dog, and all of a sudden, she couldn't hear the dog walking in the leaves. It stopped. And she realized that she heard nothing. There was nothing. And so she's yelling and yelling. She couldn't hear her voice in this zone. She was screaming, and there's no sound coming out of her mouth. So she thought that her dog is going to get killed, probably by Bigfoot or something. And she kept on screaming, whatever. And as she started to back away from this zone, and then as she walked out, she could hear the dog walking through the leaves again. And there it was. So I said that I wanted to go to this area to check on it myself. So I went to this ground that she pointed out. And here I go, walking into it with my compass. And I walked in there, and I heard total silence. No sounds, no wind, no sound at all. And here I am on this ground, and I'm getting creeped out. You know what it's like to go into a complete room? There's no sound at all.
Are you tapping into what was in the past at that time, or is it still present now?
I'm talking about right now. It's there right now.
Oh, okay.
It's there right now.
Yeah. This place exists. And, Mark Turgraff. You know Mark?
Of course.
Turgraff? Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
Mark Turgraff, I called him to this place, and I said, check this out. So he comes down to this place, and I point to the ground, and you see Bigfoot footprint right there. I said, what is it? He goes, it's a Bigfoot footprint right off the highway. He says, there you go. So Mark sees it. You know, Mark was with me for other things too. You know, he knows, like when his father passed away and wouldn't leave the property. And it's in the book. I wrote about that.
That's some fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
So was that an absent witness then, you're saying?
No, this was
Or is that in something or somewhere the dead are singing?
You're right. And I wrote about that.
Gotcha.
And everything is true. I mean, the thing is, Mark is there. And I wrote about it. And he never said, oh, this is all wrong. He was there. He saw it. And finally, I got a minister to come over to get rid of his, to get his father to move on. And he did. And I says, now when you go into the office where his father was habitating, I says, it's a totally different feel now. And Mark went into the room, and because he knew the father would not leave, he goes, it place is so different now. It's like light. It's like it's not heavy anymore. So Mark has been with me on some of this stuff, where I've done investigations.
Let me ask you this, and I know that we want to wrap up because I'm sure you've got a bunch of other things you got to get to. But one of the things Eric Mattson, who was our first guest, told us that when they did the initial atomic explosions right before in the 40s, that disturbed some level of interdimensional travel or interdimensional beings. They then became aware of us, and we became some level of a threat to them in terms of what we were then capable of doing that we weren't capable of doing before. Have you ever interacted with that type of interdimensional being in terms of something else that that is out that way, or come across it at all, or know about it?
I don't believe I have. But see, if it's really done well, I wouldn't know if I did or didn't.
I suppose so.
Yeah.
Because they are so good. When, like I said, always going back to Ingo, because we are so close, about the things that he experienced, that he wrote in his book, Penetration, about interacting with aliens. And, and I'm reading that, and it's like, I heard someone else recently say the same thing that he said, except it was overseas.
Wow.
And when I said, do you think you're the first ones that experienced this alien thing? I said, so I went to Penetration. I made pictures of the pages. And I said, read this. What you experienced in England is the same thing that Ingo experienced here.
That is pretty great. Karl, I really want to thank you for coming on the show today. This has really been absolutely amazing. And thank you. Thank you seriously as a brother and as a friend. And I hope we can maybe have you back if you have the time and interest to want to do another episode in the future sometime. And obviously we'd certainly love to meet Paula. Maybe we could talk offline about that. But as of right now, we're going to sign off. And this has been Brothers of the Arcana. As always, I am Alex Aldea.
I am Dave Ferrigno, and thank you so much, Karl, for joining us for this enlightening conversation.
Thank you so much.
Oh, it was great.
Take care. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.